Okay, so
Barry.
be-
Barry.
Barry, what?
Barry.
We're not doing Barry.
Oh.
We did Barry already. You gotta
I
wait
would
for
like
your
to do
new
Barry.
season. So there won't be One Piece or Worm this week, which opened up a huge slot of time for us to tackle another JoJo's part.
Yeah, which we've been wanting to do for a while.
It's always like it's the if we have a good filler slot where we always slot JoJo in because we're still working through our backlog of JoJo's and part 5 basically ended. So I guess we have to talk about that while it's topical as well. But
Yeah.
we're not talking about part 5.
Yeah, and like JoJo's is pretty like I guess the original reason this podcast exists anyway.
It's
Uh,
I'd say like it's 60% of the reason at worst.
so yeah, we're gonna talk about battle tendency today.
Right on. So we did 7, we loop back to 1, and we're gonna do 2 now, and then I guess we'll skip to 5 because we're weirdos. But battle tendency is, I'd say, the part where JoJo's really becomes good. I think universally everyone gets to battle tendency and they're like, wait, I actually like this now.
Yeah, I agree. I think tendency. I think every part of JoJo's carries over its previous part like a little bit every time you transition, but like tendency, especially like the first few episodes feel very Phantom Bloodish, and it's like pacing. But then once you get to the part where you're introduced to
Strizo. Different translations have them.
No,
different
sorry,
names.
the Pillar Man.
Oh no, that's Santana.
Santana. Yeah, he things just go off the rail and really just get fucking crazy.
So, like for me, the thing I really like about part 2 is kind of what it introduces to the series for me. Like parts 1 through 4 each introduce something to the JoJo series. Part 1, I guess, obviously introducing the series itself. Part 3 is, it introduced stands, which is a pretty freaking big deal.
And the stand of the week formula that goes on for the rest of the series forever.
And part 4, I think, introduced
Good
modern
writing.
JoJo combat. The battles in part 4 going onward are very different than everything before, I think.
Battle Tendency to me really stands out from the rest of JoJo's. It's like my third favorite part, and because Araki hit this really good sweet spot when it came to balancing out the classic like kung fu mystic arts beat 'em up, but with this extra layer of like, I can't. This person will literally kill me in one hit. How do I position myself in a way to like basically show his hand and do his ultimate attack, and then be open to the point where I can just beat immediately.
Yeah.
And
what
it's like, and you go on, Bradley. Yeah, you can finish.
What I was gonna say is parts 1, 3, and 4 introduced those things, and I think what part 2 introduced to me was just the general vibe of JoJo's,
the bizarre,
like the characters, the villains, the aesthetic, even.
Yeah.
And to this day, whenever I hear "Bloody Stream," that to me that's like the most JoJo song for me.
God, that song fucking slaps.
Yeah.
So good.
I've been watching it with some other friends, and like they're like, I like the first one better. It's like, yeah, but when you get to the part where you get to Caesar in the church and everything happens, and like Blaze Stream comes on, you're ready to fucking go. Like, I think after that episode for me, like it was like go time. I have to see where this is going, what's going to happen. Like,
Such a good.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Let's back it up. So another thing I think this part introduces is bullshit tactics, which is what Joe was getting at, right? Which is the JoJo classic of like out of the world, barely possible, sometimes impossible strategies. And you turn your brain off to it after a while because it's just so fun to watch it, because it starts really early. It starts from the first fight, which is Straits, where Joseph is like, haha, I put a grenade on you. Psych, it was 10 grenades.
It doesn't even start there. It starts like in the first episode where Joseph breaks a police officer's finger with the bottle cap of his Coca-Cola.
Oh, that's not bullshit. That's just Hamon bullshit. That's different.
Then
we're talking about grenades on grenades on grenades and using shot glasses to reflect eye lasers.
Wait, then later he goes to dinner and like get in a scuffle with this guy across the table because they
Right.
bring Smokey in, and he tricks the guy into beating up a coat hanger instead of himself.
Jesus Christ, you're right. You're right. That's some of that dumb shit that we like and dislike.
But talking about that like kind of first episode where we get to meet Joseph, this past week I read Araki's book about,
Ooh.
I think it was titled The Art of Creating Manga, and he kind of goes through his creative process, and he's like, these are like rules that you really
It's
really want to
Manga
follow
Theory
in
and
writing a
Practice
story.
is the name. Sorry.
Yeah, and so he's like, these are rules you really, really want to follow in writing a story, and he kind of explains his own personal process. And he says, as a general rule, when you're when you're writing a story, you want to try to introduce your main character as quickly as possible. In general, I think he does this with some exceptions where this like the premise or setting might be more important. Like maybe
I think
part
he
5
always. I feel like 5 is the only one where he doesn't, because you're
No,
in the beginning.
I
So
feel the opposite. I feel like the one he doesn't do it is in Steel Ball Run, because you don't see Gyro or Johnny until the second chapter, basically.
that's because that was a whole weird thing. But when you do see them, I think Gyro immediately is like, "I'm Gyro, Nyohoho." Like,
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree. But like, even then, that's like a whole chapter like wasted to not introducing your main character.
that's back when he thought he could make Sandman relevant.
Yeah. The reason this first episode of Battle Tendency reminded me of that particular part of his book is I feel like out of all the parts, this is the one where he might introduce the main character the fastest, maybe even faster than part 1, because there's that little scene at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think it's out of all the parts, this is probably the one where it's most important for him to introduce the character immediately.
Yeah, for sure.
Because coming off the end of part 1, you're like, okay, what the fuck do we do now?
Keep in mind, this is still like late '80s, mid to late '80s, and people are not ready for you to kill off your main character and move on. That's not a thing you really do.
It's like after Battle Tendency going forward with each JoJo part, people are like, oh, which JoJo are we going to get now? But at the time, they're like, oh my god, what are we going to do without Jonathan?
Mm-hmm.
So, man, for the introduction itself, out of all the introductions we've gotten to a JoJo protagonist, I think I like Joseph's the best because I've never, one, it's such a stark contrast from the JoJo that came before, and 2, we just get such an immediately good read on his personality.
It's really well crafted, and then part of it is because what you said, it's the biggest difference. It's the biggest jump from one to the other that you could get, and there was no character like Joseph in the story at that point. By the end of part 2 or 3, you've seen personalities of all sorts and types, but like Joseph is just like, oh, that's a kind of character that can exist in this world. That's really fun.
Yeah.
And Joseph's a very, I don't want to say complicated, but he's a very variant character, and there's a variety to him that you can believe. That he's very hot-headed and very aggressive and very angry at people very quickly, but at the same time he can be very cool and collective, and
he's an inconsistent human being, and that's consistent within him.
There's in the spoiler part for it, I guess, when you figure out that he cheats on his wife and has Josuke, I was shocked, but at the same time I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
I
was disappointed, but I was like, yeah, you did. You did.
I wouldn't be surprised if Joseph did that. I think that's one thing that's really good is that Araki makes Joseph a very interesting character to follow, and he has so much variety to him that it makes every encounter with him interesting because you don't know how he's gonna overcome it.
And he's the main focus of this part. It's not quite as bad where Jonathan did every single thing, except for that one time Will did a thing for 5 minutes and then died.
Yeah,
but Jonathan is a solid 80% of this part. So the fact that he's so alluring and fun really draws you in.
Yeah.
And, go on.
He's neat. I mean, he's just a fun time. Every time he's on screen, he's super charismatic, and I think the biggest jump to me is that he could be super smart but also super dumb at the same time, because he has a fight in the desert with Desert Man, and he uses the cactus as water to transfer the Hammond up and shoots the cactus into the guy's eyes and disables him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, that was pretty smart. He was able to like get down there and use like a rule of Hammond we already know to his advantage and win the day. And then 5 minutes later, he dresses up in drag, thinking that's what's going to get him into the Nazi compound. And he's upset it fails.
And then he just shoots coconuts at them, and they go tacos, and then they pass out. It's great, man. Tequila Joseph is a fucking classic.
Yeah,
that's such a Joseph move.
It's a very good joke gag too. Like it's.
Let's talk about the 5 main villains because they're also a big part of this part.
I guess there's 5.
There's 3 plus Straits plus Santana.
Yeah.
So we can start. I talked about Straits a little bit. It's cool that he comes back and now he's actually interesting because he was barely in part 1, and now he's this vain guy who hated the fact that he's aging, so he's following after Dio. And the fight with Straits is such a good opening fight. It's one of the best in all of JoJo's, I think, as an opener. Because
it really sells like Joseph's tactics of like, I'm gonna do whatever is possible to win. I don't care like if I'm going to be harming people or if it's going to cause public damage. The point is not to like be honorable; it's to win and survive. That's
quite not true because he does the Gatling gun thing where he just fires into the bar, but then he also like very explicitly gets baited when Straits kidnaps that girl, and then Joseph is like, I don't care, and then he's clearly lying.
I think that's what kind of makes Joseph interesting, that he's going to try almost everything, but he knows like when he has to step up and be the hero, and it almost frustrates him to a point.
True.
And so it's like there's that, and it helps with that transition from Jonathan to Joseph because you can see that bit of Jonathan still like come up in him. It's like he has to be the good guy, like he can't just be cold blooded all the time, but he's above Jonathan that he will rely on dirty tactics to win the fight,
which makes him so much more fun. Man, he's the hugest step up. But the thing, so with Straits, something that makes that fight really fun is the fact that he's using the move that killed Jonathan. He's using the Space Ripper Stingy Eyes, as it's called, to shoot the eye lasers, and Joseph just figures out the counter after like the second time, and it just really sets that fight apart. It's like, oh, Joseph is quite the thinker. He didn't get caught off guard. He knew what to prepare when he was fighting a vampire. Yeah, just a really good intro fight.
The oddest thing I think is that like he's like, I remember my grandmother telling me about the vampire that killed my grandfather, and it's like, I'm surprised you actually believed her.
Well, I mean,
it's 1930s.
It's with Speedwagon there. I'm sure Speedwagon would have backed the story up, and it's like,
maybe, yeah.
I mean, the Speedwagon and my grandma, who I love dearly, they're not gonna lie about this weird shit. Like, I don't believe it until I see it, but I'm also prepared for it.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I just thought it was funny. It's like, oh, okay, well.
Which I think the next major point to hit in is Santana. Man, that is such a creepy fight.
His entire episode where he's being introduced and his body is doing these like gross morphs, and just how powerful he is, like they did a really good job at making me terrified of him.
He was so overpowered for the time, but like it's not like Joseph still like was keeping up, but like my god, just his introduction against normal humans when he goes into that one guy and like inflates him, that's terrifying. And he's breaking his body up to get into like a 5-inch slit in the wall to get through the vents. It's just crazy. And that's just a really good fight because it also introduces Stroheim, the best Nazi to ever exist.
Yeah. It really that fight itself kind of turns it on your head because you think like, oh, this is what the bad guy's going to be. It's going to, at least from an American audience standpoint, of like, oh, the Nazis dig this thing up, and then this guy's just gonna be a stooge, and then it doesn't turn out to be that way. So it's a nice kind of like, oh, that's different. It will never happen now in today's times. I think maybe with today's like
climate.
Climate
right.
Happen like Battle Seem never get a live action adaptation because of Stroheim, which is really sad because that's what makes the part so interesting.
Oh, don't get it. He'll just be a German soldier like he was in the anime.
There you go.
The manga was a lot more overt. They were doing Hail Hitlers and had swastikas and shit. Hail Hydras. God damn it.
But yeah, that fight's fun. And then like Joseph is like, you kind of get the like the one weakness is the same as the vampires, and Joseph just like figuring out like, okay, I can't win my strength. I have to figure this out with my brain, and really solidifies that fact like this isn't a fight about punching hard; it's about punching precisely.
Yes, and that becomes the JoJo standard from this point on, really.
Yeah.
It kind of like wobbles a bit with the introduction of stance, and then it solidifies for the rest of the series. A thing about that fight is that they introduce Stroheim as the scumbag that he is, but then a couple chapters later, he's also showing this huge act of bravery and patriotism as he's willing to blow himself up to get Santana exposed to the sun, which is just another horrifying scene to add on top of it. Which,
while providing exposition.
Yeah. Well, you know, someone's gonna be Speedwagon in these early parts.
Do you think Araki, when he was writing this part, like decided to change his mind midway through this arc, or do you think he always like had 3 big villains for them to show up?
Oh, he changed his mind 100%.
Okay,
that's what I thought. There's zero doubt. You know how he does. But the thing with Stroheim is a big part of JoJo that I feel like is the most underappreciated theme of JoJo's is the idea that anybody can step up and be a hero. I think that's a huge part of every part, really, has moments of this happening, where in this sense it's a villainous Nazi who steps up to do his most to save the world, where Stroheim has so many heroic moments, especially later as well. He is Joseph's ally for the final fight, and he really sacrifices his leg, his arm, everything for that fight. So I'll get onto that more and more as more characters like this are introduced, but I feel like Stroheim was the beginning of this. So at this, like Joe was saying, Araki now changes his mind, introduces the Pillarmen with their goddamn amazing music. So good. It's Aztec Dubstep is something I didn't know I would like as much as I did.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Pillarmen because I think the first time JoJo's as a series like entered my consciousness, even before Willard would talk to me about it, I think I had like heard the Pillarmen's theme.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, that sounds badass, and I didn't really think more of it. And then I met Willard more, and he talked to me about JoJo's.
And then you connected the dot. It's like, oh, that's what that was.
I kind of remembered that song. And as you told me about it, like the series in general, even though you probably told me about all this stuff that's even way cooler than the Pillarmen, for some reason that stuck with me. And I was like, oh man, the Pillarmen sounds so cool. And I had actually seen their like introduction scene where they awaken before I started the series. And
the pose, it's a classic. It's a meme.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I was aware that they were supposed to be like a huge step up in power level and stakes. So even from the time I started episode 1 of JoJo's, like the whole time I was building up to like, man, I can't wait to see these Pillarmen and see what they're all about.
Bradley, how did they deliver? What are your thoughts?
I thought they were very badass. At the time, they kind of like Santana. It's just one of those things where I feel like they did a good job of letting you know how terrified you should be of these people.
I really like the first encounter with them where Joseph and Caesar don't stand a chance. We'll talk about Caesar maybe in a little bit. And it's believable that they get out of there alive because Joseph is pulling everything out of his ass, crawling, pretending to be dead in the goofiest scene.
Oh yeah.
Putting his clackers in between his like back muscles so he could do sneak moves. Just the goofiest things, and it's not quite enough. And it sets this timer to the part where they corner them down and they're given 30 days. And I really like this scene because it's like AC/DC is like, okay, I'll get in. This sounds like fun. Hey, Cars, you want in? And Cars is like, no, that's so base. That's beyond me. And it's just a really good way to set all 3 of them up, at least their inner squad relationships, pretty well.
And I think too, it does another thing where like part 2 does a really good job of, like I said before, with like Stroheim just flipping your expectations about people on its head, where Caesar and Joseph are very much the underdog. Well, the underdog is more classical, but they're not honorable. They're very much like, we just have to like scratch and like fire our way out of this as best as we can. Like, we can't fight these people one-on-one. you know, all the pillar men are like the ones that are giving them a fighting chance, kind of like being honorable and like, here's the duel time, be here at sundown, bring your best gun, you know, just like really kind of having some sort of honor to this fight.
It's mostly because of Wham, you know, like
yeah.
He's really the reason why the Pillarmen died when you get down to it. But
yeah.
Speaking of Wham, he is my favorite Pillarman. He's the best villain of this part for sure for me.
I think he has the most like payoff when it comes to like his fight against Joseph with everything that happens.
Yeah, he has two great fights. One against Caesar, which they even extended in the anime a little bit, where he does a couple more tornado moves, which is fun, and just the idea of that fight where Caesar screws up for a split second and Wham is like, that was the mistake to make. I will take advantage. And in that 1 second, he turns the tables around. That is such a fun moment for me. And is very indicative of JoJo's, where split second decisions can completely overturn the fight.
And that's a good moment too, because like all up to this point, like we've always seen our protagonists win by those like split second decisions in this part. Like
True.
Joseph diving down the well, or you know, using the cactus, or you know, using the icicles like make a ladder, which is probably my favorite bullshit moment of all of JoJo.
That's such a fun one. That's a fun fight as well. Them falling down the ravine. It's like it's the weirdest. It's the non-traditional fights which become a thing in later parts. I really like that.
This is the first like moment where like a bad guy's like, it's like, I got you.
I'm a JoJo character too.
Yeah, you overextended. I know how to kill you now, and just does it like ruthlessly, and
it works.
Yeah, it's really tragic too.
Let's talk about Caesar, because I know Bradley's not like the biggest fan of Caesar. I like Caesar a lot personally.
I was gonna skirt around it because I think I am fully aware that I must be in the wrong, because I think I'm the only person on Earth who just didn't really care at his death scene. So I don't know. You guys tell me all about it.
Well, as a character in general, I thought Caesar was like a really fun rival. He was a friendly rival to JoJo. The friendship that they build through their training, and when he reaches out to save Joseph, he does it without asking Lisa for permission. He asks for forgiveness because at that moment, he broke her rules to save Joseph, hoping that she would forgive him. It's weird because like he puts her at such a high pedestal. Like he looks up to her so much. It's brought up later as well, but he sees a friendship in JoJo that he's willing to break it, and it's just like that's the moment where they become good rival bros. You know, like the fact that I like Caesar because Joseph likes him. It's one of those things where it's like they have a good camaraderie, and he's very enjoyable as a result.
I just remember like when they first meet each other, they're fighting in the park.
So dumb.
They're going, and then like Joseph is able to stuff a pigeon down his mouth. Jesus
Christ, that's some JoJo's right there.
Yeah.
And I also like his moveset of using Hamon bubbles. Very fun. The best application of Hamon, just period for me.
Yeah.
Because it fits. Like you can put your Hamon through this liquid surface, and I don't know. And just when you get to his backstory, his lineage as a Zeppeli is really interesting. Where he started off as like a ruffian. He meets his dad. His dad doesn't even realize it's him, but puts his life on the line to save him, and that really instills the idea that like a Zeppeli will sacrifice themselves when the time comes. And he does it for Joseph. He, with his last breath, that part really gets to me. Like, all bloodied up, he stands up and he goes up those steps, and he slips on his own blood, which is like the most pathetic thing. And before he can fall, he gets one last lunge and he pulls the ring out. The last thing he can do is pull the ring out and give it to Joseph, his last sacrifice. It's a really good way to build up on what they did with part 1 with the Zeppelis. So that death scene, really good. The music too, woo! The anime did it so well.
I think he's neat.
Cool.
He ain't no gyro though.
Joe and Bradley unimpressed.
No, the thing about, I agree with you, Willer. It's like you have this great like rivalry build up between Joseph and Caesar the entire time, and you get to a point where like they pretty much are brothers, and you kind of see them one for one. They very much bounce off each other really easily. They're pretty much foils in their ideas of like who you should be and what it means to be a man for both of them.
Yeah.
And so like in that moment, like it's kind of like Caesar realizing that like he like respects and like appreciates Jojo for who he is, even though he's not his idea of a man, because they had that big fight right beforehand.
Yeah.
So it's just really nice. It's just a really, it feels very earned, especially everything that they've gone through, and you feel like they've kind of grown up together in the span of small 2 or 3 episodes span we've seen them together.
How do y'all feel about Lisa?
I thought she was very cool.
Mm-hmm.
The first big female character. Like Erina was also there, and I really like Grandma Erina as well. Like sassy grandma who everyone loves. But like Lisa was the first fighter. She doesn't get to do too much, but like her aura and like the way she trains the boys, she really leaves an impression.
Mm-hmm. And she does really well against Cars too. Like she just kind of dicked by him cheating, literally.
He cheats.
Which is funny because of everything else about Joseph and them. But she's great because she like is able to instill this coolness, and you feel very confident around her. And she's a great teacher, coach.
A moment I really like is where Joseph's like, "Hey, you're not gonna let us die in this oil pillar, right?" And she just glares down at them. She doesn't say anything. Mm-hmm. It's such a good moment to just establish what kind of teacher she is.
I like the part where she tries to do her cigarette and she fucks it up.
That part is such a good part of the death scene too. Oh my god. Lisa Sensei, your cigarette's backwards. Come on, man. How was Araki already doing this shit that early? Shit, man. Let's talk about AC/DC. He's my least favorite by far. I don't like AC/DC.
He's so forgettable, which is a real shame, because he kind of just shows up and you're kind of like, why? Like,
I don't like his crying gimmick.
Yeah,
it's dumb.
And I kind of like that it allows like Joseph to have this moment, and it gives you this kind of confidence, like, oh, they can beat him. They can beat him, and it kind of like flows you into thinking that Wham is actually going to be Caesar's kind of like pillar man to beat. But when you really think about it, like, that doesn't make sense, because it's like Joseph's whole arc of beating Wham because of he fucked up kind of deal. But gives you into this false idea of like, oh, they're going to go 1 for 1 and they're going to just tag team Cars together, essentially. You know,
but nah. Yeah, his fight is probably my least favorite of the part, including like the pre-Pillarman fights. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I really like about him is that he's all about Sun Tzu and like mastery of war and like being a tactician. He's just a good foil to Joseph in that fight. It doesn't play off very interesting, but it has its moments, I guess.
Yeah. But I will say that fight was the point where I went like, this show is really fucking weird. When like it's just his brain and his veins, and they like take over Suzy Q.
Yeah, that didn't need to happen either.
That was just like, woo-wee.
Bradley, what are your AC/DC thoughts?
I think he looks cool, like his character design.
Yeah.
But yeah, his fight, you know, he's sitting there.
He's fun to play in the video games, I guess.
There you go.
And then that leaves Cars as the last character we haven't really talked about. What do y'all think about Cars?
He's badass.
He's badass. I'll say that.
I'll give him that.
I fucking love his design, both with the cloth on and with it off. He looks fantastic.
Yeah, Wheeler likes that cloth off, huh?
Sure, dude.
Well, I want to see that horn.
Sure, dude. I want to see his 3 horns. All right, whatever. So you do too.
Cars is Cars is very Frieza to me, where he's just like, I want to take over the world. I'm the most powerful thing ever.
My power level's over 1 billion.
Yeah.
I think he's way more interesting than that.
Yeah, I like him more than Frieza.
No.
The thing that made Cars interesting is the really late flashback you get on him. I thought that was a really cool flashback where there was this race of Pillarmen, but among them a genius was born, and he wanted to take him even further. And he just kills all the other Pillarmen, Him and AC/DC get Wham and Santana, and they bounce, and he's like, "I will conquer the sun, my one weakness." And the scene of him conquering the sun is one of the most iconic scenes in JoJo's for me, where he has his back to the sun and it's rising, and he's wearing the mask and his hair's flowing like a god. Actually, the mask is already gone, but the hair part is true.
And he says, "This is to go even further beyond."
Just like that, and then his hair grows.
Yeah. And he screams for 3 minutes.
So good. Sean Shamel was so good as Cars.
Yeah.
I think that is a really good scene, and they were followed up by the greatest tactics in all of JoJo's.
Nigerunda yo! Just running away. That needs to come back.
Yeah.
Josuke runs a lot in Part 8. I guess that's...
I think Cars is a really good kind of like final villain, and like really shows that he is kind of like he's using everyone else as stepping stones to get what he wants.
Yeah.
And so it's a good foil.
So it's like a generic villain plot, but I feel like he's executed well.
Yeah, and like which is a good foil to the rest of the team that shows up, because like Speedwagon is funding everyone to get everywhere. At least Elisa teaches Joseph. Stroheim shows up with like an army of goons that ends up fucking everything up.
Yeah, it happens.
But like the idea of like coming together to be like one unstoppable force is something that I think becomes relevant between all of JoJo's, like with Dio, Kira, Diavolo, Pucci. Like it's just a constant theme.
Everyone, the gang's all here. So as all the good things to say about Cars, I'd probably put him as my second least favorite
of the main villains.
Yeah,
I think so too. Like right above Diavolo.
He's maybe tied with Diavolo for me. It's because Diavolo has Doppio going for him.
That's true.
It's close. I do like Cars though, and I will also say he has my second least favorite final fight. Like, there's a lot of cool moments, but it's also like a lot of Joseph flying away, and the volcano scene isn't like that cool.
Which is a shame, because the whole point of the whole thing about this part is learning to like land the one punch you need to land, and setting yourself in a position to land that one punch, or it ends on just a complete like accident.
But it's also part of the prophecy, and like fate is such a big part of every part of JoJo's, where I think it's the biggest in 5, but every single part of JoJo's has like a big fate element, and I feel like that stone was a cool implementation of that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel nearly as like earned as like some other parts that deal with fate strongly, like Part 7. Part 7 has a lot to deal with fate. But I also feel like...
But I also feel like it wasn't overbearing. They mentioned the prophecy, and it's kind of funny because the stone gave birth to the ultimate creature, but it was also the one thing that could kill it. I like the cyclical loop that it made.
It kills him, and then gets cloned 36 times, and then he comes back with a bunch of stands.
We do not talk about that on this podcast. I'm serious. We won't give any credits to George Joestar. What are your favorite fights and characters of this part, and your least favorite fights and characters? Go, Bradley.
I mean, Joseph is my favorite. I really love him. Not just in this part, but in all the parts he's in.
For sure.
Fight-wise, I really liked his Santana fight.
Good choice.
Least favorite character, I guess, would be Essie Desi.
Yeah.
And his fight would also probably be my least favorite.
Like, Smokey's barely in there, but I like Smokey more.
Smokey!
Smokey has some character to him.
Yeah, Smokey's fun. He also becomes the mayor of Georgia or whatever. That's cool.
Yeah. That's not how U.S. politics works, but that's fine.
That's how Mafia works.
Yeah. I think Joseph is really the standout character in this part. It's like hard to top him. That's why he's brought back for 2 other parts and is the most prolific JoJo right after Jotaro.
Yeah.
So it's that's kind of an easy gimmick, but I think my favorite fight is the Whamu versus Joseph fight in the arena.
I was gonna say that is a hype ass fight.
Because it basically is the climax of the entire part, because it's essentially like Joseph's revenge and him like learning like, okay, I can't just be a goofball all the time, but I can use that to my advantage to beat this character. and
Like,
beat him.
the shit with the ricocheting balls is really dumb, but also so cool. And then how he rides opposite of Wham with the fire so that Wham can't sense him with his horn. And then just, I love the final blow where Wham is just sucking in all this air. Joseph throws the oil so the oil can enter him, and then he uses his bandana from Caesar to ignite it. It's such a good final blow.
See, and that feels like really earned because it's Joe, like he's setting up all the pieces to the puzzle and like executing on it.
It's like peak Joseph tactics, you know. It's really good. That being said, when Wham shoots his arms out of his chest and they hold on to Joseph even though they're disconnected, that's the dumbest shit, but in the actual dumb way.
But like we've already established, the Pillarmen have like complete control over their bodies, so
They're fucking better.
it's not. I mean, we see Santana just like fold himself into like an origami like crane to get.
But not like a disconnected body. Even AC/DC has to like use his veins to go grab it. Anyways,
But, like,
go on, Joe.
Battle Tendency is good. You should read it, you nerds, or watch it, you nerds. Whichever one.
Okay, well, my favorite's Joseph, and the chariot fight, and AC/DC is my least. Okay, bye. Oh wait, hold on. Where would y'all? So out of the parts we've covered, which is 1, 2, and 7, what's your current concurrent part ranking?
Of the 3 parts?
Yeah, well, we're gonna do this each time.
I mean, it's like 7's the best.
Obviously, it's 7-2-1 for all of us. All right.
7-2-1. Come on.
Main character wise, what would y'all put?
Like main character wise?
Yeah, I'd probably also
7-2-1.
go 7-2-1. Main villain wise, no, 7-1-2. There you go.
7-1-2.
That was 7-1-2. Dio was a lot more compelling character than Cars because he has like a very human motivation, but is twisted.
There you go. Those are the 3 things we'll cover.
Dio can love.
God damn it.
Giorno is proof that Dio can love.
Jesus.